So today we hear three things in the gospel: troubled, betrayed, and denied. That's what's happening in this gospel. Jesus is experiencing, it says he was deeply troubled. He was hurting in his heart. Have you ever had that moment in your heart where you just feel this horrible feeling in your heart, and it just pulls you down? You just feel this profound sadness, like something horrible is about to happen. That's what Jesus felt. Have you ever felt that experience of someone that you thought really cared about you, and maybe they did, but maybe through maliciousness or through weakness, they betray you? Have you ever felt that stab in the heart of you hear someone talking about you, maybe someone who is very, very close to you, and it crushes your heart that they would say this? And maybe it crushes your heart even more if they say it out of meanness and not out of weakness. That's what Jesus felt. Have you ever had that experience when you have someone close to you, someone that says, "I'm always going to be there for you," and then when you start hurting, they run the other way? And when you reach out to them saying, "Please, I need your help right now," and they say, "Well, I don't know who this person is." Jesus felt that. Sometimes we forget that Jesus suffered his entire life. We think about this moment, we think about him dying on the cross, we kind of get ready for Good Friday, and that is the extreme moment of his suffering. But we forget the fact that he came into this life from the very beginning hurting for us. Think about when he was a baby. Remember Herod? Herod was trying to hunt him down. He wasn't able to even have a normal childhood. He had to become a refugee because there was an entire army that was trying to kill him, and he did nothing wrong. He just was born. And Herod was like, "I don't like you because you were born." And so he went to destroy Christ. And Joseph took Mary and Jesus, and they fled. And so Jesus had to begin his first years of childhood in a different country, without the people without his family members, his relatives. You know, some of our members of our parish, maybe they've had that experience before, of maybe being in a country and maybe very difficult things going on. Maybe there's wars, maybe there's different things like that, and they have to leave. And maybe they leave as a child. And so these things that maybe we take for granted, the fact that we can actually be at school, we can play games, we can be on sports teams. I mean, COVID right now is kind of taking that away for a little bit, but many of the children of the world maybe don't have the same kind of quiet childhood as many of us have. They had to flee, they had to go across a desert. Maybe they were hungry at different times. Maybe they couldn't find water. Imagine just trying to cross the Sahara Desert. It was rough. And that was just the beginning of his life. And growing up, when he starts to tell people who he is, he gets up in front of his neighborhood and he preaches. And guess what they do to him? They put their hands over their ears, they yell at him, and then they run at him because they actually want to try to pick him up and throw him off the mountain. I mean, imagine that. Imagine you got up in front of the school and you were going to tell them something, and then your whole class came and they were trying to take you and throw you off the mountain. I mean, we don't have mountains around here, but maybe Starved Rock or something like that. that's what Jesus experienced over and over and over and over again. But then his friends, the ones that he prayed all night long, and he said, Father, who are you giving me that I can walk with for 3 years, spending almost every single day with them? And he chose 12. And one of them, we heard, would directly betray him. Another, his best friend, would actually say, I don't even know who this person is. And all the others, except for John, would all run away. And even at the cross, none of them would be there except for John. And even some of the moms of the disciples would be there, but the disciples wouldn't be there. Imagine how much that must have hurt Jesus' heart when he was suffering there. Have you ever, maybe if you've been sick, you've been hurting, and part of the suffering is not the physical suffering, that's bad enough, but that feeling of being alone, the feeling of the people that really care about you not being there for you. Jesus felt all of that. And he could have at any moment just gone like this, and he wouldn't have to do that anymore. He could have just said, no, this is too much. Or he could have just said, no, Herod, you're really not going to hunt me down. You're gone. Bye. He could have done that because he's God. And yet, what did he do? He spent his whole life willing to suffer because he saw you and he saw me. He saw us in the future, and he said, by suffering now, I can open a way for my special children to be able to experience hope, love, strength, so that when they're in their difficult moments, they don't have to be alone in that. But they can know that I'm with them, saying, I chose to go through this hurt when I didn't have to, because I love you. And so Jesus' whole life is this act of suffering to make sure that we're okay. Isn't that beautiful? Jesus is there for us anytime we're hurting. And he spent his entire life hurting so that he could be so close to us whenever we hurt. And that's why it's important for us to respond back to him with thank you. That's one of the reasons why we come to Mass. The Mass, the Eucharist, it actually means thank you. So if we really think about what God has done for us through his whole life here on earth, and it culminates in Jesus dying on the cross, but it's his whole life is this, then imagine if you realized that someone that you loved was willing to be hurt every single day to make sure that you were okay. What would you do? Would you turn the other way and say, oh, that's nice, I'm going to do something else now? Or would you say, I can't believe you did that for me. You spent your whole life hurting just so that I wouldn't have to hurt, that I would actually be able to find peace. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Another way of saying that in Greek is Eucharist, Eucharist, Eucharist. Do you see why Mass is something that we need to think about it, not so much as I have to go, but I need to because God is so good to me. And the least that I can do is to give him back an hour of thank you for taking his whole life and suffering for me. So I just encourage you, whenever you're at Mass and you maybe feel that sense of, oh, why do we have to be here right now? To think about Jesus as a child, as a young person, as someone who had friends that left him, that betrayed him, that denied him. He did all of that just because he loves you. And that helps us approach this moment with open hearts, saying, God, where else could I be but here saying thank you?